in a minute. So the session's being recorded. So we've got about an hour. So we've got an hour. We'll finish about 11 o'clock. So first of all, I think probably just a couple of introductions. I'll introduce myself, and then I'll ask my colleague Charlotte to introduce herself as well. So my name is John Hector. I'm an employability consultant. I work in the careers team alongside Charlotte. We work together on lots of enterprise projects for the university, and Charlotte's going to tell you a bit more about that towards the back end of the session, about the Bath Sparks program. But my role is really employer facing, so I develop relationships for the benefit of students and graduates. So that could be around internships, placements, graduate recruitment. But in terms of this session, I guess my sort of relevance is prior to joining the university about 3.5 years ago. I was a freelance consultant for 10 years, so I worked mostly in Bristol and Bath as a consultant, specializing in the arts and business startup and working with arts-based organizations. So I work with people like Spike Island, Colston Hall, local authorities, charities, private work. So I was self-employed for quite a long time. So that's me. I'm just going to ask Charlotte just to introduce herself, and then I'm going to tell you what we're going to cover today. So just over to you, Charlotte, just for a quick intro.
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to see if my video will share or not, so you can see me, but it wouldn't play ball a second ago, and I don't think it's going to. No, I'll carry on. I'm sorry about that. I think it's the Monday morning feeling for laptops. I'm Charlotte Godfrey. I work alongside John. I'm also an employability consultant within the careers team. My role specifically is around enterprise and startups. So I help any students or graduates who are considering maybe going freelance or exploring even setting up a business, whether that be a service type business or a product type business. And as part of that, run the Bath Sparks Awards, which is enterprise funding, which is available to students and graduates to apply for. And alongside John, also run our new creative space for graduates called Emerge, which is a creative practice space, all of which the individuals, our residents, are all mainly freelance within the space across the creative industries. Before joining Bath Spa, I was a creative producer within Bath for a number of years as a freelancer, and prior to that I was at the BBC for 14 years in production management, recruiting, contracting and working with freelancers on a daily basis. So I understand what it is to be freelance and the challenges of it, and I also understand the kind of principles behind the contracting side as well. So hopefully this session will be a starting point for you to explore that, and very much encourage you to ask questions through the session, and if there are particular things you'd like more info around, we can follow that up afterwards, because I'm conscious sometimes an hour isn't quite enough to go as deep as you want to into some of the topics. So yeah, I'll hand over to John, who's going to talk us through what we're going to cover.
Great stuff, thanks Charlotte. So yeah, definitely use the chat in terms of any questions, and we'll certainly give it hold on a sec, our best to get back to you on questions. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to really talk about, get to the bottom of what is freelancing. So what are the realities of freelancing in terms of starting up, in terms of HMRC. Secondly, we're going to look at the pros and cons of it, because freelancing, isn't for everybody. So I'm going to talk about the benefits and potentially the downsides of freelancing. Charlotte's going to go through really looking at business planning, so doing some planning for your freelance career, if that's the route you're going down, which is really useful. We'll talk a little bit about HMRC. We'll cover the basics of that. I'm also going to do a little session around networking and finding your network, and I've got some networking organizations. So really, once you get moving forward, how are you going to find work? So I've got a little session on networks and networking. then we've got time for any questions, but as I said, pop them in as you go forward. So don't leave them to the end. It pops something in the chat and we'll see if we can answer your question. And at the end of the session, we're going to talk about other Workfest sessions, because this is day one. This is the first session of Workfest. Workfest goes on for 2 weeks, and there's lots of other good stuff coming up in terms of networking sessions with Creative Bath, for example. So I'll talk more about that towards the end of the session. Okay, so I'm going to move the next slide on and hand over to Charlotte.
Brilliant, thanks, John. So let's start with kind of what is a freelancer, how is it defined, and what that kind of means for you. So a freelancer is an individual who's self-employed and is not committed to a particular employer long term, and you will be working for multiple clients at any one time in what's usually called a portfolio career, where you might have multiple things going on. You may even have multiple hats like this lady here. They may interlink with each other and they also may not. You'll work on project-based contracts and multi-client driven. So you'll always be looking, as you're working along on one project, you'll also be trying to win the next client and create a pipeline of work for you. But it takes time to do that. And that's why it's really, really good now to start while you're as a student or as you're just graduating, to think about how you can break that down into a kind of simple pathway without trying to leap straight in there, which is quite a hard thing to do. Freelancing is becoming an increasingly popular way to build a career, and also for companies to employ people. There's been a huge boom prior to actually COVID, just because the way companies have been restructured over recent years. But now, since COVID, even more so, it's going to grow even more as companies want to make themselves as agile as possible. So it's good to know what it could look like for you being a freelancer, so that you're ready if you need to take on that as an option. If you're thinking of going into the creative industries, again, it's very likely that even if your first type of work is not as a freelancer, as you grow, as you become more experienced, it's more and more likely that you will be employed as a freelancer rather than as a member of staff. So the most popular reasons for using freelancer for businesses, so I was saying it's around the saving money, access to talent. So when you're you have a project going with a company, it could be that they need very specific talent at only very short times, so it wouldn't be worth having someone as a member of staff, and they need that flexibility. So bringing on freelancers for specific roles is becoming increasingly popular, and also they don't have to train you. If you're a member of staff, a company has a duty of care to keep your training up, to keep things going, keep you up to date. As a freelancer, that responsibility is all down to you. So it makes good business sense for employers to use freelancers as part of their business strategy. Now, I do have a little clip around starting out as a freelancer from the screen skills, which I'll share with you in a minute. I think it's probably going to be better. I think what I'll do first is to talk about how we kind of define the difference between freelancing and being staff, really, because okay, some of these are really obvious, but they're questions that John or I will get asked when we have someone who comes to have a one-to-one with us to talk about how they might approach going freelance. So length of contract, freelancers are contracted for a specific amount of time. You'll start on one date and you'll have an end date. And for that, you'll probably be given a day rate or a project rate. Whereas a member of staff, you're put on your salary, you have that income each month, which you know, and you will get paid that regardless of, I suppose, how busy you are, and regardless of whether there is work coming through or not. In terms of tax, obviously you're fully liable for all of your, responsible for all your own tax returns and for paying your national insurance. So not only do you have to factor in kind of your working day and what you do as your skill base as a freelancer, but you also have to factor in kind of that admin side that usually if you were employed by somebody, that would kind of all be done for you as a member of staff. So it's an extra layer that you need to consider, but it's not something that should put you off at all. You just need to learn it, understand it, and ask for advice where you need to. In terms of pensions, this is quite a big thing. Obviously, as a freelancer, it's down to you to save for when you hopefully can retire. And I know a lot of freelancers, unfortunately, where this can be a really hard thing to do, and you come to kind of save for your pension at a lot later age generally. But again, it's something that you can factor in and look for alternative ways to kind of save for your pension. Whereas obviously a staff member, you'll join the company scheme, and there's obviously the government scheme that you have to sign up for as a member of staff, and companies have to sign you up for. In terms of kit, freelancers, you will actually be expected to bring in your own kit. Obviously, most of the time you'll be doing quite a specific specialist role, and as such, you might have to bring in a specific kit. It might be around filming, it could be production, whatever that is. You'll be expected to source that kit. You might be hiring it in, but you'll be hiring it in and then charging the cost of that back to the companies that are employing you. Whereas a member of staff, it will be expected that the company will have to source that for you, and you can use their equipment. In terms of work, obviously you're responsible for finding your work, finding that pipeline, so that you hopefully don't have any quiet time, I suppose. Whereas a member of staff, yeah, you might be driven by sales, you might have targets to hit, but ultimately you're paid each month, and you know what's coming in. So as a freelancer, it can be quite hard sometimes to plan for that, especially in the early stages, and that's when freelancers often have job while they're building up their freelance kind of portfolio and base along the way, and then build up those days slowly over a period of time. So John's going to talk us through the pros and cons of freelancing, but before we do that, I'm just going to share in the chat with you. My laptop is super slow today. Right, let me just copy this out because it's quite a nice intro. It is creative industry based, this this clip, but I think it's really useful. So I'm sorry if there's anyone on here not on a creative course, but even so, I think this is undoubtedly useful. So if I just share this in chat. There we go. And I'll just give you a couple of minutes to watch that, and then yeah, just rejoin, and then John will go on to the pros and cons of freelancing. It's just nice to hear from individuals who are, you know, making those first steps into freelancing. So as you've watched that, just if someone just says that, yeah, they've come to the end of it, and then we'll leap on to some of the pros and cons of freelancing. hopefully that's coming to an end shortly. Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Beth. What we'll do is we'll move on to some of those pros and cons.
Excellent. Okay, thanks for that, Charlotte. Yeah, so I'm just going to talk about the pros and cons of freelancing. So it's not for everybody, but there are lots of benefits to it. So first of all, I think that the biggest one cited by people who do go freelance and start their own business, their own freelance, being your own boss. So it's really that you know, that sort of vision to make something happen for yourself. And I think for some people, employment can be great. You can work for some great people, but for other people, you know, doing your own thing and making something happen for yourself is the way to get that sort of, I don't know, the satisfaction, that drive of making something happen. So being your own boss is obviously a really big one. Secondly, I think also flexibility in terms of freelancing is really important. Certainly in terms of my career, I mean, I've been employed and self-employed, and my self-employment bit for me gave me flexibility around childcare. I had young kids, so I was able to develop my business and also factor in terms of time when I worked, and was able to do childcare and look after the kids. So that flexibility in terms of freelancing was really important to me. So that was a massive one. The third one I think is really important as well, because I think it's about, again, in terms of my interest. I was a business advisor and freelance consultant, but I had and have a love of the arts and music and arts and literature, writing. So I really sort of, I suppose, pointed my ship, as it were, towards the arts and creative industries. So I worked, as I said before, places like Spike Island, Spike Design, worked a lot with musicians at Colston Hall. I was a freelancer at Bath Spa years ago in terms of enterprise and startup, and a lot of creative stuff. So I think that's important. So in terms of, you probably heard a lot about portfolio careers. So at any one time I had maybe 4 or 5 clients at once to make up my portfolio freelance business. It can be, depending on what you do, it can be really financially advantageous. You know, you can get some really good day rates in terms of the sort of work. Again, obviously depending on what you do, but it can be financially advantageous. I mean, in terms of now starting up now, obviously with where we've been in terms of the pandemic and COVID, and again, it's sort of depending on the sector, but certain sectors have been fairly badly hit by the pandemic, and I suppose performing arts would be an obvious one. So for some maybe graduates who are trying to get into the job market and maybe finding it difficult to get employment, then a piece of freelancing work can be great in terms of developing your skills and getting something on your CV. So again, it could be, you know, you're starting out. I think the other point to make about it is it isn't necessarily the case that you might just jump straight into freelancing. So for example, when I started to freelance, I had a part-time job working for an arts agency. So I was working 3 days a week at the Watershed in Bristol. And on the side of that, I started to do a day and then 2 days a week in terms of freelancing. So that really gave me almost like the job gave me a stake in the ground in terms of some income coming in. Then I was able to develop some freelance work on the side. So it's an obvious point again, but sometimes people get confused about it. You can be employed and self-employed at the same time. And that might be a nice way to go. It sort of de-risks it a bit. And then in terms of my career, I got to the certain point where I thought, now I'm going to go freelance completely. I developed enough networks and enough possibilities to make it a whole freelance business with a portfolio of clients. The other, I suppose, benefit is you can really develop your networks, and networking is so important. So in terms of, if you get a piece of work and you do it well and the client is happy with you, you might, on the back of that, you might meet other people and develop more work. So really important to develop your networks. We're going to talk more about that a bit later in the session. So lots of pros in terms of freelancing. We'll talk about the flip side to the coin, I suppose, is what are the risks. And again, it's not for everybody. There is a bit more risk and insecurity. So there isn't a regular paycheck coming in at the end of the month. So it's potentially a bit more insecure. And income can be irregular. Depending on the projects or the clients, or a project comes to the end. I think Charlotte was making the point. It's almost like jumping from stone to stone. We need to keep thinking about, well, where's the next project? Where's the next gig coming from? So maybe a bit more risk, but again, you can mitigate that. One example I've just given is maybe having some part-time work and then doing some freelance work on the side, as it were. A bit more to do, so you need to keep your books. You need to do a tax return, although you get an accountant or a bookkeeper to do that for you. We need to do some marketing, so we need to do some networking, maybe social media. Do we need business cards? So we need to develop our business. So a little bit more to do. The fourth bullet point, again, it can be a bit lonely. Maybe it's just you, or are you going to work alongside somebody else? But some people find this, it can be a bit lonely rather than being in, say, an office environment where there's 10 or 15 people, colleagues alongside you. Depends what you're doing, obviously. And then obviously the big one, so Charlotte's already alluded to that, so a lack of employee benefits. So no pension. If we've got a project or a piece of work on the day and we're ill, then we won't get paid. So we don't have those employee benefits of sick pay, holiday pay, and pension benefits. So we need to provide for those ourselves. And so yeah, it's a different scenario in terms of being self-employed than it is in terms of being an employee. And as Charlotte said before, then we always need to be looking forward. So it's not just about the project that we've got. We need to be networking and meeting with people and looking for opportunities for the next piece of work, and keep our skills up together. And Charlotte talks about training. So we need to keep our skills together to be attractive to potential future clients. So that's it in terms of the pros and cons of freelancing. Those are the main things. There may be other things, but certainly those are the main points. So I'm going to hand back to Charlotte. She's going to talk about some business planning for freelancing.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so very much that, again, I've got another clip, but I'll share that at the end, I think, so that we can keep moving forward. A business plan basically is a record of what your business is, so what you are as a freelancer. It covers, what you do, your values, your aims, your costs, so your day rates, who your clients will be, who you're targeting, time frames, marketing, branding. And if you, as a freelancer, from the very start, think of yourself as a business and formulate that into a business plan to give you some structure, it will really help you move forward, especially through those early stages where it's really hard to kind of build momentum, know if you're doing the right thing. It almost becomes, I kind of see your business plan as your business partner, especially when you're working on your own as a freelancer. Often you know, as John said, it can be really lonely, but having written something down, it gives you something to check back on and to see when things are going well, you can cross-check and say, oh, that's because we did that and I did that and I'm happy with that, I'm going to move things forward. Or if things are not moving forward, you're not winning those clients, looking back at a basic business plan that you've created can help you evaluate that kind of process, really. And it also gives you a really useful document to share with other people. So that could be a potential accountant, so they understand what you want to do, and your aims for being a freelancer and how you want to develop and grow. It could be your manager. If you're looking to get a loan for maybe getting some kit, they would probably want to see a business plan. Likewise with mortgages. Also, just when you're getting some career advice, often having it down on a couple of sheets of paper to share with a consultant or someone that's supporting you can really help. And also, if you get your business plan and your CV going at the same time, again, it's good to marry that up in that process. And again, it will make you more aware of what you're doing, and you'll sound more professional and more authentic because you will know you and what your offer is. Yeah, you'll know yourself basically. But my tip to you as a freelancer is to keep it really simple, relevant, and user friendly. Because sometimes I think people think that business plans are these massive, hefty documents that are kind of feared in a way, but they shouldn't be. They should be easy to refer to and a helpful tool for you. There are a few headings for a business plan, and I'll just run through those. And what we'll do afterwards is we'll share them with you, and a template as well, which you can use going forward. And then you can come back to us with any questions if you want a hand with anything. So a business plan starts off with the exec summary, which is ultimately partly a summary of everything else below from the headings below. And it summarizes exactly who you are, what you do, how you're going to do it, and who you're targeting. And often it's easier to write your exec summary after you've written some of these other headings, or you can start it out as kind of a brief 150-word kind of a synopsis of what your target is, and then you can just refer back and rewrite that as you're working through your business plan. So then it moves on to products and services. So that's very much around what are you offering and what's your skills and what makes you unique compared to your other competitors in the market, I suppose. You've got your market research as your next heading. Who else is doing what you're doing? And where is the market for the service that you're offering as well under the market research? Your market strategy is, well, how are you going to take yourself to market? How is anybody out there going to know that you want to be freelance and you're ready for work? You add value to their projects. So that's around you thinking, how are you going to build your profile online? Do you need a website, for instance? Can you work just off social media? Can you join some of the networking online social groups that John's going to talk about in a bit more detail shortly? But how are you going to get there and start getting that pipeline of clients? Legal structure. Obviously, it's fairly simple. As a freelancer, you're most likely just going to register yourself as a sole trader in terms of business structure. But sometimes as freelancers grow and they find themselves employing other freelancers, as projects get bigger, sometimes freelancers choose to set themselves up as a limited company. So although that's something you probably won't be considering at the moment, it's just interesting to know that there is an option there as a freelancer to create more of a structure for yourself around your activity. Also, in your business plan, you'll write down the insurance that you need to consider and get cover for. So certainly as a freelancer, you'll need public liability insurance cover as a bare minimum. And then on top of that, you might have some kit insured. And if you're doing very complex activities, then you may have additional insurance relating to that. but find out what you need for the industry that you're working in. But just be mindful that public liability will be your basic minimum requirement, that you probably won't be able to go out there and do your freelancing without it. Then we move on to operations. Where are you going to run this business from? So some people may need an office space, for instance, that would come under your kind of operations. But for freelancing, it's generally really simple. You'll be running this from home in the initial stages. You might go and work in a co-working space. Some people like to go and do that once they've started to get a little bit of income in, so that you can go and work in a space with like-minded individuals who are also freelancing. But yeah, that's operations. Obviously, if you were doing a startup, it's a lot more complicated in that area. And then we go down into your business plan areas around the money. So your startup budget. What do you need to get your freelancing off the ground? So probably for freelancing, it's more likely to be something like subscriptions for software. It might be specific kit that you need to buy and things like that. So again, you'll know that what's specific to your profession that you're looking to develop, but also be mindful on what you can potentially hire in the early stages, rather than making significant investment before you need to. A lot of freelancers, even established freelancers, still use the model of hiring in expensive kit on a day rate, and then putting that cost back onto their clients. Your survival budget is basically, what do you need, say on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to survive? Your rent, your food, your phone, all the basics that you need to survive. Then you know what your bottom line figure is and what income you need to generate each month. Then you can work out how much of that might be coming from a part-time job initially, and then you can work out your aims for freelancing days each month. And it may be that, yeah, I'm going to aim for 10 days freelancing in the first sort of eight weeks, and then slowly build up. It just gives you some targeted points, and having those figures against things in a budget helps you break that down, and helps hopefully you see it grow as well. And then your cash flow forecast is basically, it's a forecast of the money coming in versus the money coming out. And again, we can share some templates with you afterwards for that, because it's a kind of a session in itself, working through all of that. So this is a bit more kind of business planning side of things, but I think if you really do get this right in the early stages, it really will help you be more successful and to grow. And ultimately, when the going gets tough along the way, sometimes in the early stages, you'll feel more driven and more sure of what you're doing. One thing that's really useful is a business planning tool called SMART Goals. So helpful is to set yourself a few goals and make them all SMART. So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And what I always think is really useful is to do some that are 3 months, some that are 6 months, some that are 12 months, and a couple kind of big scopy ones that are maybe 3 years down the track, and make those initial ones in the 3-month goals, make them really achievable. It could be that in the first 3 months, you're going to set up a bank account, you're going to understand who your clients are, you're going to research other freelancers and find out their rates and how they promote themselves on online. So make sure that they're really simple, and then as you grow out from that, your 6, 12 months, and then 3 years, they become a bit broader, and then you can break them down to make them easier to achieve. But hopefully that will help you kind of create some goals and focus, because again, when you're moving from maybe studying, and we all get given goals and we've got targets, or you work for somebody else, we kind of we have that drive that's kind of given to us, but as a freelancer, we need to create that to keep ourselves kind of on track. And also another lovely business planning tool is SWOT analysis, where literally the easiest thing to do is get an A4 sheet of paper, and in one corner write strengths, the other corner write weaknesses, the other bottom corner opportunities, and then the other bottom corner write threats. And then look at yourself as an individual and the profession that you want to go into, and look at where your strengths sit, your weaknesses, where your opportunities sit, and your threats. And again, you really start to feel sure of yourself, but also you'll identify things where maybe you need a bit more work as well. But getting it down there and breaking it down really helps, because then you can start moving it forward and getting it out of your head, which can be quite confusing, and on paper. And again, the more you get on paper, the more you can share with other people, whether it be a mentor or through networking. You'll be able to articulate, where your concerns are with other professionals, and ask questions about how to get through that. And it really helps to share, to share and understand how you want to take it forward. And I think probably I don't really need to go through all of these 10 points. And when you're starting to do all this business planning, really think about who you are, what your drive is ultimately, your passions, your values, and your interests, because there's a reason why you want to go freelancing and maybe not into full-time employment. So really look at that and evaluate that, because sometimes you need to really know that to keep your drive as you're building your business. So I think that's probably enough of me rattling on through business planning. John, is there anything else that might be useful in terms of that? Because I know you know a great deal about that area.
No, I think that was really good. I mean, I think from my sense is that the research, if you're in the pre-start stage, so you haven't started, one of the key things to do is have a look at other people and who's doing this. How do they present themselves to the world? Maybe how are you different from that? Are they presenting themselves well? What can you find out in terms of pricing and rates? So research or pre-start is really important. All that other stuff is really important as well, but I'd say doing a bit of research is really, really important. Is that okay, Charlotte?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, John, and thank you for just saying that. Yeah, knowing your rate and knowing what your competitors are charging is so important, isn't it? And knowing that from someone who's starting out in the profession versus someone with, say, 10 years experience. So you understand the scale of that sliding scale of the cost. And also, I think it's really important and fair to say as well, don't pitch yourself too cheaply, because you may win lots of early clients, but those early clients are unlikely to stick with you when you start needing to put your rate up. So get a rate that's fair for you and competitive. Don't undersell yourself. Right, so I'm going to rattle through talking about HMRC. This is a huge subject, bookkeeping and filing tax, and it's not one we can cover in detail in this. So my top piece of advice is to talk to a bookkeeper or accountant to get some basic free advice. Most people will give you 30 minutes or an hour session, or likewise, there's loads of kind of business local business support. For instance, there's Cool Ventures in Bath, and you can sign up for free workshops with them around bookkeeping, accounting, in fact, everything from marketing through to accounting to business planning. But here's the basic kind of figures, just to give you a starting point, really. There's an allowance of £1,000 before you need to register with HMRC. So you don't need to panic or rush too much, but likewise, leaving it to the last minute to register and then trying to file a tax return at the last minute is also best avoided. And that's where you hear all these crazy horror stories. It's just people that have left it too late because it's something that some people fear, and then it kind of builds up. But actually, if you do it little and often, it becomes part and parcel of your kind of working week, really. You've got a personal tax allowance of £12,500 at the moment. So that means you don't have to pay any tax until you earn over that amount. Now, it does mean you still have to file a tax return to say that you've, declare what you earned, but you won't need to pay any tax. It just becomes an admin exercise. And also, it's good to remember that because you are freelance, you can offset all your expenses against that as well. So it may be that you've earned more than £12,500, but you've had say £3,000 worth of expenses. So once you've taken that away, you'd still pay no tax. So again, it's to be mindful that by filling in that tax return doesn't mean that you're going to have to give your money away to the tax office quite yet. HMRC actually have a really good website, and the sooner you start getting to know that website and looking around it, it's actually quite user friendly. It's got loads of really good guides on there, and there's a step-by-step guide on there for setting yourself up as self-employed, and also they've got a customer service line that you can call up if you're just not sure or want to ask a kind of a basic question, and they are really friendly on there, and I'd encourage you to call them up because ultimately they want you to do it right. And they're not there to judge you at all. Again, don't be fearful of phoning them up. They're really helpful. It's just to talk about, I generally get asked about national insurance. The thresholds are different for that. I won't go into the details now, but basically it's around £3 a week. So it's not amounts of money, and the threshold obviously is lower, as you can see. It's just short of £6,500, and you just do that all online. And my tip to you is to set up a separate current account. If you are thinking of going freelance, that would be some really good preparation to do. So you've got your main current account, which you've got at the moment. Just set up another one alongside it, just freelance work. It could be you might put a bit of money in that, just to cover your initial expenses until you get your first payments coming in, but just use it as that. Pretend it's a business account basically, and you can have all your invoices paid into that, and then all receipts that you cross-check on your bank statement. It will become really easy and simple. And schedule in 30 minutes a week to start with, just for your account planning. If you start doing that, and even if you haven't got much to do at this early stages, do your 30 minutes and do it as research, or use that 30 minutes to make calls to accountants, to bookkeepers, to send some emails, to kind of learn and gather information and research about it. And then again, it will become part of your routine, your working week. And in turn, you won't put it off. You'll quickly sort those receipts out as things build up. You'll quickly sort all your invoicing out, and it'll become part and parcel of you being a freelancer. One top tip as well is to get an invoice template set up beforehand, before you get your first piece of work come through, so you're not scrabbling around wondering what template or design to use. Get it set up now. Have an invoice numbering sequence that you're comfortable with. There are lots of online accounting systems that are available, and they are brilliant, and I'd recommend them, but not until you're ready and you've got enough income coming in to sustain the subscriptions each month. And lots of accountants want you to sign up to them. They're like Xero, Free Agent, there's multiple ones, QuickBooks, but just make sure that you're established enough to take on that extra, more effective expense that you'll have to take on each month. And until then, just using a spreadsheet, taking photographs of your receipts and keeping them in order is enough in the early stages. So hopefully gave you a bit of a insight into bookkeeping, and it doesn't seem quite as scary. But now we're going to move on to talk about networking, and John's going to take us through that.
Great stuff, thanks Charlotte. Yeah, so this small section is really about networking and finding your network, and networking is really important, obviously, for freelancers. So I'm going to talk through some potential networks that you can use. So networks can obviously be online or face-to-face as we return to some kind of normality in terms of the post-COVID situation. So here's a few examples of networks. I know that probably I looked at the attendance list before. Probably 90% of you are from arts and creative industries. I know there's several people from education and psychology, so this is very much creative industries focused. But I think just as a principle to think about, you know, where will you meet potential customers? Where do they network? You know, are there any subscription organizations that could be helpful to you developing networks? There's an example of the first one, that the University of Bath Spa has a strategic partnership with an organization called Creative Bath. Now, Creative Bath is an umbrella organization which represents the arts and creative industries in Bath. So that's a really good one, and it's free to join. So they also do networking events and all kinds of stuff. So, and people post opportunities online. So, you know, small SMEs, creative industry businesses will post, it could be for an illustrator or any number of opportunities in terms of freelancing. So if you were looking for work and say you were staying in Bath, that would certainly be a good one to join. There's another one which I sort of helped set up probably about 15 years ago, Bristol Creative, so artists. So again, people can post their profiles online. That's over in Bristol. Bristol Creative Industries is really the same sort of organization as Creative Bath, only in Bristol. So I know in terms of, you know, in terms of film and TV, it's really almost like thinking about, well, where can I, you know, where are my tribe? Where are the sorts of people that I want to meet to develop potentially as clients? For example, Watershed, you probably heard of in Bristol. Even through pandemic, they've been having a regular meet-up. I think it's on the third Friday or the first Friday. So again, you know, you can go along and meet online and meet people, and you know, you could be a writer who's looking to develop a relationship with designer or any number of other possibilities. So it's thinking about, you know, where can I meet people, where can I meet other like-minded people and potential collaborators or potential clients. I won't run through all of them. Arts jobs, I know we've got quite a lot of people from arts potentially on the call. Again, that's a really good website, and they post lots of opportunities on that website. Creative England Film and TV organisation. So I'll just flick over the page. I've got some theatre ones. I mentioned Watershed. This list isn't exhaustive, but it's just to give you a flavour of, you know, where, you know, what am I doing? Again, it comes back to that point of what am I offering, and where are potential collaborators and clients going to network, and getting out and about as well, and going to meet people. You know, lots of things are very fluid and flexible in terms of networking and meeting people. So there's just I don't know whether you want to add anything, Charlotte, about the social platforms and you know, having that as a backup to when you do go networking.
Only that just look at your social media platforms and consider what people will see when they look at your social media platforms. Will they understand what you do professionally? Do you need to have a professional social media platform as well as personal ones? And how do they potentially link together or not? So really think about what people see on those platforms, and use those platforms wisely to comment on other people's content professionally, share individuals' content, again, because it makes the strength of your network grow. And if you share other people's content, they're more likely to follow and share yours, and in turn it's incredible how that can potentially grow, and you'll get messages and contact coming through because people will want to know more about you and potentially engage with you. And obviously LinkedIn goes without saying, and I think there is a LinkedIn session over the next couple of weeks. Make sure that's up together, and when people look on, they understand what you do as a professional.
Great, thanks, Charlotte.
That's okay. Just following on from that, if any of you are graduating before October, we have got some freelance grants available, and we'll share the link with you. I think it's been shared on social and in the last careers newsletter, but in case you haven't seen it, it's a really simple Google form that you fill in, and yeah, you can apply for £250 to help build that online profile. Really, could be that it helps pay for your website or a subscription you need for for software or something like that, but just an initial kind of kickstart pose as you move forward from graduating, from being a student to graduating. So yeah, do take advantage of that, and we'll share that with the slides afterwards, and either myself or John can forward it to you if you email us directly. I'll just move on to the next slide. So over to you guys. Has anyone got any questions? Hopefully it's been, you can either type them into chat or unmute, that's fine. But yeah, we're very much here to help you through the kind of early stages of you moving forward into freelancing, and we're happy to signpost you, so do email us if you'd like to ask specific questions after the session. Oh, thanks, Laura. I'm glad it was useful. So Megan, how is the best way to find other freelancers for research? My top tip there is online to start with. So you want to connect with groups. There's often specific groups for professional sectors. So for instance, I belong to a lot of TV freelancing social groups on kind of Facebook and Twitter, and opportunities are shared through there. People put call outs and things for information. Again, on LinkedIn, you can find professionals doing the type of work that you want to do, and just message them and ask them for some advice. Say, hey, I'm just starting out. I'd really like to know, how you went about it in the early stages. How do you work out your rates? It's the best way to link and go, and things are moving as well away from online to back to face, so look at kind of groups, organizations, unions. There's often regional group meeting up, whether online or face to face, and make the most of those opportunities really, and also within your kind of own uni group, start networking and finding out who wants to do similar things to you, and share your information with each other, because you might get a great contact, and likewise you might share a great contact for somebody else. So especially in the creative industries, people are really generous with their time and information, so go for it, start talking to people. I hope that kind of helps, and also you might benefit from joining the Bar mentoring, Mentor Me scheme, where you could be linked up with an industry professional for one-to-one mentoring. So if you'd like to be sent that link, do let us know, and we can do that. The insight that you'll get from talking to individuals who are doing the thing or similar thing to what you want to do, it's really incredible. Is there any other things that you can think of, John, in terms of connecting with other freelancers?
I think that's pretty good. Charlotte, I think there's just a question there from Alvina. So, I mean, I'll take it if you want.
Go for it.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it, in terms of the rates. I think Charlotte's point beforehand, a common mistake of freelancers is to undercharge when they start out, because there's a keenness obviously to get work, and it's a fine balance between thinking, well, I'm not maybe an established professional, I'm starting out. You know, in terms of pricing, it can depend. I mean, I had contracts where there was a day rate and the client was in charge of that rate, and I had other work where I had to pitch in competition. So I think difficult questions to answer, Alvinos. I mean, in terms of, well, anything you could add, Charlotte, in terms of raising the rates?
It is a really tricky one. Obviously, if you're already working for clients, you would have to consider what you think they would find manageable, because obviously they're trying to run a business as well, presumably, and manage their own costs. I think probably the best thing to do is to do some good research around what rates, what your rates should be, and what you'd potentially like them to increase by, and then make slow steps in order to start raising that. Don't go raising it overnight by vast amounts, because you will lose your clients, and you do want those because they give you good case studies as you're building. But it may be that for any new clients that you have coming forward, you increase your hourly rate or day rate accordingly from this point forward, once you've got your you know, good research on the table that shows where your rate should be, and then you can slowly move everyone forward. It could be that you move them forward by, if it's an hourly rate, £5 an hour more, or if it's a day rate, you know, you might raise it by £15 a day, and slowly get to where you want to be. So just be mindful of how they will take the news, and maybe you cut the losses with the current clients, and just move it forward slightly for your new clients, so you feel more comfortable with it.
That's good advice. Thank you, Charlotte. I think that's it. I think we're just slightly over time. We're just going to finish on a final slide. As I say, this is the first day of Workfest. Lots of other good stuff coming through. It's all bookable. You can see some examples there. Sort of enterprise related. There's a session there on Tuesday about social enterprise, which you might be interested in. And again, we talked about networking. We've got a session on Wednesday, 12 to 1 o'clock, with Creative Bath, and some externals are coming in to talk about how they develop their networks and their networking skills. Another session there on LinkedIn. I won't go through all of them, but lots of other good stuff on offer. So please take advantage of that, and it's not too late to book now. So I'd just like to say thanks ever so much for attending on this beautiful sunny day. I hope you found some stuff to take away that's really beneficial. And as Charlotte said, if there's anything that enters your mind or another question, feel free to contact us, obviously beyond this session. And also the session will be available within 5 days' time to view, so you can go through it in slower time as well. So again, thanks very much for attendance, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.